Hi everyone, we're going to go through this really fabulous printable that I found on the internet that goes over so many amazing basics for augmentative communication. So let's start with what is AAC. So that stands for augmentative and alternative communication. So what are some of the ways that we, as maybe typically developing adults, communicate? Well, we use our faces. We use our tone of voice. We use our voice itself, our speech. We use gestures. We use body movements. We like to text people or write emails to people or call people on the phone. We can write them letters. We can write them all sorts of things. Literacy bridges our communication in vast arrays. But these are all ways that we communicate. So what if you were not able to read yet and you couldn't use your voice to communicate, right? So now you need some alternative or augmentative ways in order to communicate. And so that's what we're helping our students to do right now. Now, let me tell you a little bit about some of the different ways that we can help our kids. So what they call light tech communication are things like this, where they're communication boards. They might have one picture. They might have 66 pictures. They might have 4 pictures, but they are picture boards or picture books, right? They can have more information in them than just the board. Mid-tech is where you have something with a battery. So let me show you a very simple mid-tech here. This is a mid-tech voice output communication system. So I can hit it. And I've recorded my own voice onto it, and it can tell me that one message. And this can be super powerful for getting kids to participate in a routine, right? Being able to communicate a thought during a routine, even if it's a pre-scripted thought, allows kids that otherwise wouldn't be able to participate to actually be part of the interaction. So it can be really powerful. And then finally, we have what we call our high-tech augmentative communication devices. And these are things that are like electronics. So a high-tech one that is very common, it would be an iPad with a specific communication app on it. Or you might have a really fancy device that's just for augmentative communication and super hardy. You can mount it onto your wheelchair, things like that. Those are all considered high-tech communication. But they all fall under the umbrella of AAC. Okay, so we're going to learn some strategies that we can help our AAC users to be more successful. We're going to turn to the first flip. Oh, and by the way, I have to give credit. This amazing thing is a free download. It's from vlindertherapies.com. Okay, so you want one of these yourself, go there to download this awesome and amazing handout. Okay, we're going here to my first flip, and it's about being kind to yourself. Guys, learning AAC is not always easy. Something like this you'd think would be really easy, right? But you have to learn when's the appropriate time to use it, and how should I use it, and which kids is it best for, and how can I get kids to participate, and how do I make it fun, right? This is a huge learning process that unless you grew up with a family member with a significant disability, these might not come naturally to you. So you're going to have to take time to learn what works best and how can you be helping these students all the time, every day with their AAC. Also, if you have someone with a high-tech system that might have a whole bunch of buttons on it, you might get really confused. And you might be like, I don't know how to work this device. This doesn't make any sense to me. So it's okay to not know how to do it at first. It's not okay to give up and put it on a shelf, because this device, this high-tech device, or this board with a bunch of pictures on it might be that child's best way of communicating. And it's not fair to that child to take away one of their only opportunities to be able to communicate complex thoughts. So have some fun with it, practice with it, use it with each other, and use it all day long. And guess what? it will get more natural and more fun. And it's okay if you don't know what you're doing. It's okay to admit to the child, like, oops, I sure couldn't find that word. That was a mistake. And let me try again. We're all learning, and that's okay. And it's okay to admit to your students as well. Okay, I'm flipping the page. See me, see me, see my AAC, right? If you have a student whose primary method of communication is through something other than the things that are already attached to their body, then those things need to be with them all the time. What the literature is looking for and the observations are looking for is that system within an arm's length away at all times during the kid's day. So think about that. Is it? And if not, what can we do to change that? So if you're like, oh, well, I don't want to bring their $7,000 device outside in the rain, I get that. So can we just bring a communication board outside then, right? Can we keep it close to them? Or you're like, but they're in the bathroom. I'm not going to bring this with me to the bathroom. Well, can we post one of these to the bathroom stall wall? I mean, I don't know. Or maybe you just need to keep your mini core on you and always be really within distance and let the kids have access to being able to pull that out and use that themselves, as well as having you model it. But the important part is you cannot communicate if you don't have access to communication. And that's not fair to say to some kid the equivalent of, I'm going to tape your mouth up for these 2 hours because the adults don't want to carry around your device right now, or because we're not going to force you to carry around your device. That's a basic human right. Communication is a basic human right, and we need to allow access for these kids to their communication system, whatever that is, or provide an alternative. Again, sometimes a high tech is not going to be the best choice in the bathroom, but a low tech might. Okay, I'm flipping the page. Okay, speak AAC to teach AAC. So there's a really super famous quote, and it's by Jane Corsten. And what she said on this listserv, which is kind of like a Facebook message group, so none of us can actually get hold of the original message because, like a Facebook message, it just disappeared into the ether. But it became so popular that everyone uses it now. It says, the average 18-month-old has been exposed to 4,380 hours of oral language at 8 hours a day from birth. So if you assume that that kid is hearing about 8 hours of oral language through their mom, their dad, their sisters, their brothers, the TV, the radio, anything like that, right? So that means they've been exposed to over 4,000 hours in the first 18 months. And what they're being exposed to is the way that they too are going to communicate. Now, if you have a kid who's learning to communicate a different way, because it's not working for whatever reason. So let's say they're going to learn how to communicate using this, right? So we're like, oh, wow, we probably need to expose them to 4,380 hours of this for them to be at about the same level as an 18-month-old, right? Okay, so now let's assume we're in a classroom and it's a really busy classroom. It's, there's a lot going on, and I totally get that. And so the teachers are like, I just don't have time to model this. We use it, during the one work group, or they use it during speech time, and the rest of the time it's on the cabinet or it's in the drawer. Or, I'm not even quite sure where that is. Okay, so the speech path, that's me, comes in and says, okay, let's work on this. And let's say that I have a great schedule and I can see that kid one-on-one twice a week for half an hour, right? Yay, that's awesome. That kid is getting an hour of speech and an hour of exposure to their communication system, right? Not so right, because it would take me to work with that kid until they were 84 years old before they could get the same level of exposure to this communication that your typically developing kid is getting exposed to this communication, right? That's kind of a little scary. So what we need to do as educators is we've got to say, that's not going to work. We can't just expose this kid to 1 hour a week of their communication system. We need to expose that kid 6 hours a day, 7 hours a day to their communication system. That's the only way that we can really hope that that kid is going to get the exposure that we already give to the other kids out there, right? Let's Let's provide some equity. Our kids need to have the same amount of experience as every other kid out there. They just might need the same amount of experience with a slightly different language system than what your other, typically developing kids are getting. Sorry. But in order to do that, you've got to learn to speak it yourself. In reverse. You have to learn to speak it. You have to learn their system, and you've got to learn what works and how their system works. So if you have a light text system like this, you got to get familiar with it. And the only way to get familiar with it is to practice it and use it. When I first, worked on creating this and printing it out, I struggled. Trust me, I was like, there's some things on here that make it a little easier. Like we made the yellows are all in this corner and those are the pronouns. So I know, if I want a pronoun, I'm going to look for a yellow. And the greens are all the action word verbs. So I know at least to look for the greens. But gosh, trying to find that word get, that one has been hard on me. But you know what? Every single time I practice using you need to go get your communication system, I learned that word just a little bit better until finally I can do some of these. Sorry, you can't see me. Almost without even looking at this point, right? And that's what we want for our kids. We want them to be able to know, just like when you learn how to type on a keyboard and you don't have to look eventually. It might take 5 years, right? But we want them to get to know where things are because you've been showing them the whole time. Now, on a high technology device, like an iPad or a specialized communication device, some of it's going to be even more natural because a lot of them are, in category basis, and some of them are going to be really confusing, and that's okay. You got to search for it. Most of those systems have a way that's called icon finder for you to look up the pathway to get to a certain word. Other times you can just kind of explore and be like, hey, Johnny, so we are talking about a frog. And I see here that in your categories, you have a category for animals. So that seems to make sense, right? Let's go to that. Let's go to animals. You go to animals. And then maybe on this particular system, it divides it up even more. And there's, farm animals and water animals and pets. And you're like, well, gosh, a frog could be a pet. And it could be a farm animal, and it could be a water animal. I don't know where to find this. So let's just try. And then you go and you actually start looking. And not only are you better exposing yourself to where that word is, but guess what? That kid is learning categories. And categories are a vital part of a language. So that kid is learning whether you get it right or wrong. And then if you get it right, you start learning yourself. So you got to learn the AAC system that the kid is using in order to teach it to them.